Interpretation and free association.
Interpretation is used to help the patient develop
insight into the sources of his present-day behaviors.
The idea here
is that if we understand the sources of our behavior, it will be controlled
by conscious processes instead of unconscious ones.
So, when using interpretation, the analyst first identifies and then explains to a patient how his past experiences are motivating his current behaviors.
and since
Past experiences are in the patient's unconscious, the analyst's objective is to interpret material from the patient's unconscious. A patient's
Free associations are one source of his unconscious material. The process of free association involves instructing the patient to say whatever comes to mind,
without any suppression or self-censorship at all. A patient's unconscious material can also be revealed by other sources, like his resistances and transferences, and his dreams. For example, resistance is when the patient stops
free associating because he's reluctant to bring the repressed material into consciousness.
the patient is resisting the instructions to freely associate. The analyst interprets
the resistance, and the patient then sees that he's resisting his unconscious infantile wishes.
The analyst
Also interprets the patient's
transferences.
Transference occurs when a patient projects his feelings, attitudes, wishes, or thoughts
about a person from his past onto the analyst. So, transference
is a repetition of an earlier relationship in the patient's life.
when a patient's
Memories
return during analysis
he may experience
with difficult emotions that force the memories into his unconscious. The release of these emotions
is known as catharsis,
and is considered
a part of the curative process.
catharsis means reliving and
Re-experiencing
Earlier, warded off wishes. Eventually,
this emotional process
is followed by a rational process,
known as
working through
enables the patient to incorporate the insights into his personality
and is
the final and longest stage.
of psychoanalysis.
When psychoanalysis is successful, the patient replaces old, maladaptive
Emotions and behaviors with more adaptive ones. Greenson described four basic steps in psychoanalytic treatment: confrontation, clarification, interpretation, and working through.
Confrontation involves helping the patient understand that he or she is behaving in a maladaptive way.
The next step, clarification, involves clarifying the behavior and focusing on the psychological
Processes involved in the maladaptive behaviors and feelings.
The third step, interpretation, is where the analyst repeatedly interprets the unconscious determinants of the patient's behaviors and feelings. The final process, as I mentioned before, is working through, in which the interpretations are assimilated into the personality structure.
Let me mention one last issue that is related to psychoanalysis.
Parallel process in supervision involves the situation where transferences and countertransferences occur in a supervised setting. This occurs when the counselor
Is being supervised.
The supervisor undergoing parallels how the client is acting towards the person. For example, parallel process occurs that the client displays a negative attitude towards the supervisor, and then
The counselor turns around
and behaves the same way towards the supervisor. Well, that's it for Freud's
classical psychoanalysis. I'll now turn to
some of the other psychodynamic models that have appeared on the exam.
these approaches,
were developed by people who followed Freud for a time,
but then
because they disagreed with some of his basic assumptions. First,
I want to say
say a few words about Jung's analytic theory. Compared to Freud, Jung placed a lot less emphasis on sex and sexual drive. Instead, he emphasized the deep, inherited collective unconscious, which he suggested contained ideas and images shared by all people. That brings me to the other way in which Jung disagreed with Freud. That is, Jung had a different theory about the nature of the unconscious. Unlike Freud, Jung believed that the unconscious exists on two levels, the personal unconscious and
as I just mentioned, something called the collective unconscious. Jung's definition of the personal unconscious resembles the idea of the unconscious proposed by Freud. In other words, Jung agrees that the personal unconscious arises from depression. On the other hand, the collective, or shared unconscious, is the part of the unconscious that all people share. It arises from universally inherited neural patterns, and, according to Jung, consists of the residue of the evolution of man. That is, according to Jung, the collective unconscious is transpersonal. What this means is that all people have certain predispositions to emotion, perception, and behavior that emerge regardless of a person's specific social circumstances. These predispositions are part of the collective unconscious and are known as archetypes. Like Freud, in therapy, Jung tried to bring the patient's unconscious conflict into consciousness. He just had a different idea as to what the unconscious is. His analytic therapy involves a lot of the same techniques and processes as classical psychoanalysis, including the interpretation of transference and free association. The next psychoanalysis is object relations theory. Theorists associated with this school
include Margaret Muller and Heinz
The different
forms of object relations theory all resemble Freud's analytic to some extent. However, in contrast to Freud, these folks all define our relationships with objects. Let's define what an object is. An object is a mental representation. These representations or images are also called object integers,
or simply integers.
So according to object relations theorists, an object integer is a mental representation of another person, then another. Even we have toward this mental representation.
For instance, if I mentioned your mother, you have a certain mental representation of her,
and some feeling towards this representation. We also develop a mental image, or representation of ourselves. That is called self-representation.
In terms of personality development, the object relations theorists find most of our early relationships with our parents. That is, they believe that character disorders in adulthood reflect a thoughtful sense of self that develops in our early relationships, especially our parent-child relationships at birth. So usually, the cause of problems in adulthood is poor parenting. For example, if a person experiences poor parenting, he may split his mental representation of other people or of himself into all good or all bad. The term splitting refers to the tendency to view others as all good or all bad. Splitting is a result of early parental abuse or rejection. Splitting is commonly observed in borderline personality disorder. So, overall, the object relations theory believes that our current relationships, like with our spouses, bosses, and so on, repeat our earlier relationships. As a result of this theory, the goal of object relations therapy is to help the patient develop a more adaptive sense of self and more realistic perception about others. Therapy is basically a process of reparenting, which is used to encourage reintegration of the patient's ego. Over time, the therapist provides a supportive but firm environment that substitutes for the proper parenting that the patient never received. The last psychodynamic therapy I want to talk about is individual psychology, which was developed by Alfred Adler. Adler rejected Freud's proposition that the id's biological drives are the main force in shaping personality. Instead, Adler maintained that personality is shaped by our efforts to compensate for feelings of inferiority. According to Adler, as children, we all have feelings of inferiority, and these feelings provide us with some motivation to grow, to dominate, and to be superior. As we try to overcome our inferiority complexes, we take on compensatory patterns as defense mechanisms. These patterns consist of the behaviors, feelings, and attitudes we adopt to overcome our sense of inferiority. Adler called these patterns styles of life. Depending on what we experience during childhood, we develop either a healthy style of life or an unhealthy one. Someone with a healthy style has a lot of social interests and can love others, be productive, and meet social obligations. On the other hand, some people overcompensate for their inferiority feelings and develop an unhealthy or mistaken style of life. In this style, the person has no social interest and is engrossed with having power and achieving superiority. As you'd expect, the goal of Adler's therapy is to help the patient get rid of a mistaken style of life and replace it with a healthy one. When this happens, the patient's interests become consistent with society's interests. Okay, that's it for the psychodynamic therapies. The next group of individual therapies I want to discuss is the humanistic or existential humanistic therapy. Before I get into the specific therapies in this category, I want to talk about the humanistic